KTN News. Get the whole story.
Ndio shida iliyo kwa wanasiasa, kwa watumishi wa serikali, mguu mmoja hapa, mguu mwingine hapa. Wengine wanataka kuangusha serikali hapo wakiwa watumishi wa serikali.
Agitation for political pluralism in Kenya gained momentum in the late 80s.
Distribution of the leaflets was probably the most risky.
I tell you, by the following morning, the country would be afraid.
In case you are arrested, do not show defiance.
They had a list of 40 people. Can I tell you, every one of those people ended up in our house.
Kwa hivyo nimeona mimi kwamba dawa ni kutenga mbuzi na kondoo.
Quite a number of them ended up in the committee. Others ended up being fired. Something that really affected me because they were innocent.
You are taken around all over the places. Then you are taken to the basement of Nyayo House. Nyayo House would be put naked in a water-clogged cell.
Agitation for political pluralism in Kenya gained momentum in the late 80s, ultimately hitting the crescendo in early 90s, whose crowning moment came in December 1991 when ruling party KANU repealed Section 2A of the defunct Independence Constitution, opening wide doors for multi-party politics in Kenya. Efforts that were achieved as a result of years of a bruising second liberation struggle in the trenches that was spearheaded by fearless individuals who championed two underground movements, the December 12th movement that ran a publication called Pambana, and then a more politically potent one, Mwakenya, whose full meaning in Kiswahili was Muungano wa Wazalendo wa Kukomboa Kenya, or the Patriotic Union of Nationalists to Liberate Kenya. Meet three members of the larger faceless underground movement, Professor Isaiah Ngodho Kariuki, Professor Maina Kiongo, and Joseph Kamonye Manje, who still remain tight-lipped on whose brainchild it was, insisting it was team effort.
From the University of Nairobi, a group of scholars used to meet, do discussions in the Taifa Hall, and then slowly crystallized to a movement. But Mwakenya was preceded by another movement, which was the December 12 movement, which after the people like Maina Kenyatta were arrested, went underground and evolved as Mwakenya later on. Okay. To pinpoint directly who or where is a difficult thing. One thing you must understand, it was an underground movement.
The giant underground movement that gave government sleepless nights had university lecturers as masterminds, as Professor Ngodho Kariuki discloses.
There were people like Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who was head of the literature department. There were people like Kamoja Washila, who was lecturing in Kenyatta University, Maina Kenyatta, also at the university, Alamini Mazurui, who was also teaching at the university. There were people like William Mutunga, who was in law, and who was also arrested and detained in 1980 something. 8, yeah. So there were many of us, you can say, progressive forces within the university. Remember, there was only University of Nairobi then, and then there was the Kenyatta University College, which came later.
According to the trio, the sprouting and the spread of the underground movement December 12, which morphed into Mwakenya later on, came about as a result of concerns that struggles of the Mau Mau had been sidestepped or betrayed by those who took over reins of power after independence, resulting into an agitation by people who considered themselves progressives and called for recognition of Mau Mau freedom fighters and their rehabilitation. The assassination of firebrand lawmaker J.M. Kariuki in March 1975 marked the turning point as Professor Maina Kiongo, whose father was a Mau Mau fighter, narrates.
When we came back, 3 months we said, no, we cannot continue like this. When things went so badly, people started, underground movements. And so we started recruiting people. We started forming, each one of us we agreed we have is going to form a cell.
In terms of politics, the questions were being asked in the platform, but it was realized that you cannot do very much when you are talking above the ground. That is where this started from the University of Nairobi. You are dealing with the people who are scholars, who had studied other movements in Cuba, Che Guevara, Walter Rodney, who was at the University of Dar es Salaam, and all these had been people who were now influencing the discussions.
The underground movement remained faceless, but it had its tentacles spread all over the country. It had groups of university dons, lecturers in tertiary institutions, civil servants, and school teachers. At the university, architects crafted a strategy to get hold of the deanships.
There were only 9 deans in the University of Nairobi then. And those progressive forces were fighting to control the deanships. So, Faculty of Arts, we fought. Michelle Emogo became the dean. Commerce, I became the dean. Otieno became the dean of engineering. Okozi became the dean of law. So there was a struggle also we were young. So between the young and the old, and the progressive and conformists. So that is how, in terms of campaigning for those posts, we were doing it as a team.
Mwakenya movement, whose spokesperson was Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, was an offshoot of the December 12 movement, DTM, that was crushed after the August 1st, 1982 attempted coup in Kenya. It had its roots in Kenyatta University, with Maina Kinyati as the face, but after its scuttling, the University of Nairobi wing assembled a new outfit, the Mwakenya movement, in the months of June and July 1985, which had a bigger membership and which also posed a huge challenge.
When you have a bigger movement like that underground, there are dangers. Now a new leadership was elected. Sooner than later, there was a problem. You have brought different people. There are some who want to take off immediately. We have to do something. Now they are banning. We have to do something. Others are saying, no, most. The ground is not yet ripe. There is a debate now. Within the leadership, there was a split. The people agitating for quick action had the upper hand. Now things started moving. And we have to do something. We have started mobilizing for action. Now mobilizing for action, some of us urged caution. But the voice of reason was defeated by those who wanted quick action. And it was decided, before we go on, we have to, anybody who comes to now has to take a new commitment. A new commitment, that means taking an oath. And so it was organized. And the oath was to be administered in the two places. Githunguri, Tatari Githunguri and Wagige. It was being taken at night. But somehow things started to go wrong. The rush brought in people who should not have been brought into the movement. And so the government came to get to know there was something going on.
Underground became open when it was unearthed by the Moi system and people were arrested. And even then, even in the interrogations, one only talked of where he knew. You knew only 4 or 5 people, you could not go beyond that. And the reason was that the organization had to protect itself. If you are arrested alone. If you break down, you can only break down with you talk about the 5 people you know.
We would have set days, when we would sit down, discuss, and arrange, organize activities for the cell. And we had the bulletins, the magazines that we published. What, of course, came later on to be called Mwakenya.
A single Mwakenya cell would have between 3 to 5 members, but the think tanks would insist on odd numbers. Warero Mongai, who was a civil servant working at the Kenya Institute of Administration under the office of the president, was the link between a cell and a central committee.
Sana sana tulikuwa tunatumia 5. Na wakati mambo yanakuwa mabaya tunatumia 3.
The thinking was that you belonged to one cell here with your 4 other people. Then you went and developed another cell with another 3, 4, 5 people. And then each one of them went and developed a cell. So it is spread. But even in spreading, you would not know more than you are required to know. One of the statements is to know on the need-be basis. Don't know beyond, so that if you are by any chance arrested, you cannot give more than you know.
Mwakenya's Central Committee remained faceless, and over 35 years later, the members still not ready to discuss its membership and associates.
Now the Central Committee, ngumu sana kujua. Manake kuna watu wanakuja. Wanata wana-advise nini the Central Committee wenyewe.
The lethal underground movement would disseminate targeted message to the public in a move to rally the country against the government of the day.
We used to target mainly public holidays. And we would produce those papers that would be distributed all over the place. And what we did, we zoned out the areas with heavy population where we could operate. Nairobi was one of them.
We would type it, print, cycle style the copies, and then distribute, and the distribution would be taken, would be done in one night all over the country.
And you operate in the underground. You are very careful when you mobilize people to go and distribute those papers. And you are also doing it, you are supervising them. I tell you, by the following morning, the country would be aflame. I was also in charge of Central. I would leave here at around 6. I would go to a petrol. There's a place where I used to take my fuel on credit, go and fill my car. I'm not asking anybody for his money. We were using our own money. Fill the car. I have the documents hidden underneath the car. And I started the journey. I tie the safety belt. I would do that. And I tell God, I'm not going to do this for myself. I'm doing it for your people. take care of me.
Distribution of the leaflets was probably the most risky. And I remember, just to say, a day, an event, an occasion where I escaped narrowly, I would say, when we had printed the pamphlets outside Nairobi, and we transported it back. We were transporting it back to Nairobi. So we had a whole sack of leaflets. And when transporting it, we encountered a police roadblock on Thika Road. But what we had done is that in the sack, we had put at the bottom of the sack some potatoes. In the middle, we put the leaflets, and again on top, we put some other potatoes. So when we were stopped by the police, we were obviously a bit lost in terms of how we would go about it. We opened the boot, they checked and saw a bag and flagged us off. And probably that is the narrowest escape I had. And that was of course, long before the arrest.
Kang'ethe Mungai, who was a member of the movement alongside his elder brother Waroiro, says there were two sets of publications.
Patanishi, which was for the education of our cadres. That was an internal publication for ourselves. And then there was Pabana for the general public. Yes. So in Patanishi, we had given instructions to the members. In case you are arrested, do not show defiance. Do not refuse to speak to these people. Keep talking. Keep talking to them. Tell them anything that you think is harmless. So that they see you as somebody who is cooperating. Because if you go there and you defy, you refuse to talk, they will think that the way to make you talk is to torture you.
The movement had several printing bases for its publications, and locations would be shifted from time to time. One of the locations was at the home of the Mungai brothers in Kibishiku, Lower Kabete, between Muimuto and Wangige, besides others in Nairobi's Central Business District.
We had our base in Uni Africa House. Brother had a farm there. We had a machine there, printing it as a money. It was cycle style. So you print that thing, you print the papers.
The leader of the printing was a person called Waroiro Mungai, who is my eldest brother. And he's the one who was knowing where the stencils are coming from, where the machinery will come from. He's the one who was organizing that. And I still remember Chitechi. Actually, Chitechi used to live here in our compound. Chitechi. There was another guy called Kenyua. And there was Peter Yankihara.
We do it actually this time, lakini yote tunatayarisha ya kesho. Kuna wale wanakuja. In fact, zilikuwa zinakujua hapa. Kuna mtu ambaye naye hawezi kuja hapa, lazima umpelekee. Me and Kibera ilikuwa yangu, especially wakati niko peke yangu, na kuna wakati tulikuwa watatu, wawili, hivyo.
The structure remains under lock and key, and even on this day it could not be opened because of what was said, a missing key, unsure whether it was by default or by design, since a lot of information about the movement still remains closely guarded.
Hii nyumba ukijua yale yote yamefanywa hapa ndani, utajua kama tungekuwa na pesa tungejaribu tuibatishe, lakini nani alipitia hapa? Raila. Na Raila alisema hii hata kama ni wakati huo angekuwa ndani hapa angekuwa nini structure and nini
monument.
Yes. Yeah, that's what he said. And he was very clear.
Meanwhile, the government continued burning the midnight oil on how to vanquish the underground movement that was like an enormous octopus whose tentacles were nearly in all corners of the country. The movement was operating underground like a mole, but its effects were shaking the foundations of the country as agitation for multi-party democracy hit fever pitch, until a domestic row of one member blew the cover.
I didn't know the government had got any weed. I was on the radar. Something strange happened. From my own front, domestic. I used to have problems with my wife. The marriage had reached to a point of breaking down. And she was prepared to do anything. What I learned later on, I didn't know that time. She went to my study room, got some documents, which were not necessary for the movement. In November 1985, we had lost a very, very close friend, schoolmate, classmate. He was even a god's roommate here. So when we went to bury him, I suggested, this man has left he died very young, the age of 36. He was a headmaster. He was a man so committed to education. I suggested, why don't we set up a fund? We raise money to take care of these children. I was told, why don't you come up with articles and a list. So we compiled a list of about 40 people who would be the initial contributors of the money to the fund. I had that list in my house. So my wife got hold of that list. She went to the police special branch. She said, I'm a member of a movement that is overthrowing the government, and he had a list of people who are the contributors to the movement. She gave that list. Kamonya were there. Quite a number of my friends. Can I tell you, she was asked, are you sure your husband is the leader of this movement? She said yes. What I was told on is that she wanted to go and meet the president. She approached the presiding bishop, Valley Road, Sitam. That's where the president used to go and play. She said she wanted, she said she wanted to see the president. I told her, no, president cannot be seen. You have to tell us why. I have a very, very important message. The bishop insisted, and then he said why. The bishop was shocked. Are you sure? Go and think about it. She said no. Then she was taken with the list. She said, I became the leader of Mwakenya. I was to be hunted down at whatever cost. So even when I went to Kisumu, I was on the government ladder.
Professor Maina Kiongo says his wife, whom they separated and is now deceased, was a government agent.
I was under 24 surveillance. There were 2 cars who were following me from my house. I was staying in then Split Road. I used to work GPO. There were 2 cars who were following me, After I got home, my wife was supposed to take over and give her dossier the following day. So 24 hours on the ladder. So that when I was arrested, I found a lot of information there. So when I confronted her, that was after I came back from Kisumu. She ran away on 23rd February 1986. When I came from work, I found she had cleaned the house and gone away. So that evening, I used to leave work, go home direct. Even when I go to a pub, I will not even drink. I knew that I'm being followed. If I sit down with you, you also become marked. So that day when I went home, I arrived home. I used to leave office at 4:30. I reached home 5 and to my house. A few minutes later, I heard the bell. I went there to open. I found 4 gentlemen. I told, we are police officers. We want to search your house. I told, how do I know you are police officers? They were led by Senior Superintendent Wajau.
The government had struggled to hunt down and uproot the movement, but Kiongo's wife single-handedly deflated the unit.
The government had already come to know there was a movement. The government was groping in the darkness. So when this piece of information, it was a breakthrough. And it was said I was a ringleader. By that one alone, they had the list of 40 people. Can I tell you, every one of those people ended up in the Nyayo house. People who are so innocent, because they were not members of Mwakenya. They were my friends. And here was a noble cause. You contact your friends. Quite a number of them were members, but the majority were not. They ended up there. Some of them ended up, quite a number of them ended up in the committee. Others ended up being fined. Something that really affected me because they were innocent. For me, I was not innocent in the sense that I was involved in those things.
On the night of February 23rd, 1986, the government swung into action. An elaborate crackdown was conducted that netted all the 6 main pillars of the Mwakenya movement, except one.
The regime knew that it was not sitting pretty in terms of its popularity. And so we were busted. How? I think they know better how they busted. But I remember when I was in Nyayo House being shown photographs of myself walking in the streets, by the police. Meaning that they had been on my radar for quite some times. And in one night, when they decided that it was now time to act, of course, the first person to be arrested was Peter Yankehara, who was arrested somewhere in February. And he was in Nyayo. We got the wind that he had been arrested. Now, so we pulled up our antennas, and our time came. And in one night, they wanted to make a clean sweep of 6 people. There was Gadito, Karaoke, there was Professor Ngodho, there was Maina Kiongo, There was Gekanga, who is a refugee in Sweden today. And I think there were a number of others. So they thought that in one night, they would collect all of us. That I think was on 12th March 1986. So I happened to have been out on teaching practice in Machakos when they zoomed in my house at midnight. They found my wife and children, woke them up. They were not lucky to find me.
All the suspects nabbed ended up in Nyayo House for grilling on why they were engaging in what was considered illegal and clandestine activities, since Kenya was a one-party state by law.
You are taken around all over the places. Then you are taken to the basement of Nyayo House. Nyayo House, you would be put naked in a water-clogged cell. You will stay there. You come, they will call you. They pick you up to 26th floor.
So a lot of beatings, threats of elimination. I remember one time Opio, who was the master interrogator, came and started. He came actually with 2 small pistols. I hadn't even seen such small pistols. And he started plugging in the bullets. And was telling me, it's very easy, to just get rid of you and forget about the story. And there were people like Koyugi, who was then, I think, was a PS or something like that, Minister of Internal Affairs, who came with his threats. And I knew this was now the political angle to the whole interrogation. And they would even bring, I remember one time Kiongo was brought to me, stark naked, completely naked. And all kinds of threats, and being played off each other.
I actually told them everything. I told them I wanted even to purchase a machine gun in Uganda. I told them that I even went to Uganda. I went to the Cuban embassy. I wanted to get assistance from the government of Cuba. I even tried to go to the North Korean embassy in Uganda, because there were no embassies here. Because I knew they knew these things. I knew they knew, because we had. I was not going there. In Uganda, it was not secret. Na tulikuwa na wanafunzi wengine wa Sonu. So I would tell them everything that I knew. They also knew. So they could not get a good reason to torture us.
All the suspects were charged and thrown into detention, but the Punitive Act never served as a deterrent. It was a luta continua.
When we got there, first of all, because we knew that we were not criminals, but we were political prisoners. So that gave us, the spirit to live on and even continued with our political activities there in terms of having cells, discussing political, the politics. Even went on to actually recruit other political prisoners into prison cells. This is where we found Maina Kenyati and many other places. Of course, the Kariukis who are of the Air Force, the Imanyaras, and the rest. So we actually became a political community. And it was now like normal life once again. We were scattered to the 4 directions of the wind, and we were taken, some people were taken to Shimolatewa, Kengongo, all the prisons in Kenya. I was taken to Kibos with Mondawiro, Mganga.
Manje's lowest moment was when he was moved from Kibos prison to Nairobi, as he states.
I was called for my appeal now in the High Court. and I was to be transported back to Nairobi from Kibos. There was no police van, so they had to use public means. So I was to be transported in a bus. So when you are being transported, when you are being moved from one cell, one prison to the other, you have your shirts, the ones that you came in with, your property, your earthly possessions. So they are put in a small bag for you to carry. I was handcuffed as a prisoner. Of course, that's a standard treatment. But what I thought was not frightening, but, I don't know what words I can say. They tied a chain to the handcuffs, something like 2 meters, 2-3 meters. And this is what the askari was holding on.
In 1988, 9 of them were driven from prison to State House and were released by President Daniel Moi.
There was Raila, there was Agina, there was Amina, there was Pade, I was there, and Mukangi. So we were 6 detainees of the civilians, but there were 3 others who had been detained under the coup, who are in the military. So when it was announced 9 detainees and there are no more detainees, we had left Karonganga, Wanyere Kihoro, and the Meroge Karaoke. Yeah, those 3 had been left. We were told to carry our clothes one morning, Pang alleged, and Meroge predicted, said, you people are going to be released. So we went to the State House for the first time, because we had not been there before. We met the president. We were given some tea, but we were hesitant to take tea because we didn't know whether the system wants to poison us and we die. So he came, he addressed us, and he said he has nothing to do with our arrests or our jailing, and he was now complaining to people like Lonzo and the other guy who was in charge of prison, telling them, you people are spoiling my name. Why do you arrest them? Right. Then he said, I want to release you, and I want you to go and do work. Me and Mukagi told him we were at the University of Nairobi, and we think we have been dismissed. He said, he ordered that everybody should go back to where he had come from. But when we came out, it was not going to be, because Busy, who was the Vice Chancellor, refused to address that, and we didn't mind. That's when now we moved on to struggle with the others, Matibas, the Bias who had come for the for the multi-party system.
December 1991 marked the climax of the second liberation when KANU regime repealed Section 2A of the Constitution, ushering in a new dawn of multi-party democracy.
Wengine wanataka kuangusha serikali yako wakiwa watumishi wa serikali, kuharibu pesa, na mnasema rushwa, rushwa, rushwa gani? Na watu wanataka kuangusha serikali yako.
Duncan Haemba for KTN.